This episode contains mature language and situations. Listener discretion is advised. You wake, standing on the doorstep of a beautiful mansion. The front door stands open. You can hear voices, music, so many people. You step towards the door. You have to know what's inside. You're lost. You have no memory of how you got here. It doesn't matter. Because now, you belong to the Grey Rooms. Season 3, Episode 9.
Respite, Part 1. Alma.
I stood in the center of the ballroom, gazing idly up at the impressive chandelier hanging above me. It reflected the illumination from the hundreds of candles scattered about the room. 1,000 notes of light bounced across the high walls of the chamber. These reveries were not uncommon for me. Others had told me my long years with the Alienist Lodge had left me with numerous quirks. I chose to see them as differentiators. Elements that set me apart from the endless ranks of Hell's army. Oz, as always, was the one to help me focus, to remind me of what was important here and now. I sighed and looked down at the blood-slicked floor, my focus for these last long hours. Todd had ferried the sanguine vessels down to the rooms for me as a favor. It had taken painstaking work to create the mystic sigils, delicate circles, and arcane equations I developed for this process. And now, finally, I was ready to test my theory. I reached out my hand, and Oz came to stand at my side. His ears were up, and his eyes were on me. If I were to assign myself a place in the pantheon of infernal sorcerers, I would by necessity have to place myself somewhat low in ranking. I did not possess the natural ability that sometimes came by familial birthright. I did not have the extensive tutelage I would have received if I were in a clan with notorious spellcrafters or prodigious wealth. And at my tender age, I certainly did not have the access and experience a figure like the architect could put towards their will-working endeavors. What I did have, and I smiled as I reached down to pat Oz fondly on the head, was quite possibly the most powerful and devoted familiar a sorceress could ask for. Check my work for me, boy. Dutifully, Oz patted around the great circular ritual space I'd created. He checked each sigil, each rune, every blood-soaked line and channel of power. On the far side, he looked up at me, doggy impatience on his face. Ah, good catch. Thank you, sir. Where he indicated I'd transposed 2 elements that could have destabilized my entire lattice. A journeyman mistake. I raised my hand and with a gesture wiped away the bloody runes. I gave my fingers an upward sweep, and the bloody flecks sizzled with fire as I smote them from existence. I reached with my spectral hand for the paintbrush and pot on a nearby table. As they floated across the room, I heated the blood in the pot to ensure it would flow just as if it was fresh from an artery. A few delicate strokes with the paintbrush and the transposed runes were set to rights. Oz gave the newly drawn symbols a brief glance and then continued his circumnavigation of the ritual space. By the time he returned to my side, I'd set down my implements. I smiled down at him. Good boy. I raised my hands and I felt my power rise. I gestured curtly, and the music came to a stop. The universe leaned down to listen. This was what drew me to magic in the first place when all was said and done. In the grand scheme of things, I was so small, so insignificant. But through the arcane, even the humblest of beings could reshape reality, move mountains, even divert rivers.
The Roostrix. Long closed are the doors between realms. Habla, Natalba! Now, at my command, I bid you open wide. Sis Rabim at Terrastria! Let the river flow once again. Potestate Ardraniala!
Respite Part 2. The Warden.
I stood in the doorway to the manor, looking out into the night. Murder. Chains. Blood. I had the door open so I could smell the fresh air and feel the rain on my face. It puddled on the ground in the foyer. Large streaks that would take Todd hours to clean and dry. I didn't care. Wriggling warm. Right. The architect may have built this version, may have designed it, but the rooms are still mine. Mine. And so I could tell. I could feel it somewhere deep inside. Change was coming. Chains. Chop. They kept trying to tame me, to put me back in my bottle. But you can't unring a bell. You can't unmake a piece of art. Once the art is made, it's real. It's really real. then there's nothing you can do. You just have to kneel there as the water soaks you to the bone. The gravel of the drive digging into your flesh. I'm alive still, and they can't stop me from being alive. Once they tried, but it didn't take. You can't take it from me. Can you now? Chains. They'd managed to get the chains off of me with knives and fire and screaming. They'd had to pin me to a wall. Couldn't use chains to hold me there because, well, it took so many fucking knives. I loved it. But they also come back. And as I looked up into the night sky, I could feel them all as one thing. Change. Chains. Coming at me. Coming. Hurtling out of the dark. Coming from the dark. Coming to the gray rooms.
Respite Part 3. Todd.
I swear, I'd have sworn up and down on my old dear clan matron that this was it. This was where the room was supposed to be. I'm in the South Hall, see, and I had in my hand, in that nice script Miss Alma used, the name of the room I had to... Bugger me! I swear sometimes the rooms do this to me on purpose, you know. They know, other than the guest, I'm about the only mortal what comes and goes round here. Oh, that one. Miss Alma explained it all simple like. Todd, she says, we need you to do this for the project. We need Mr. Beckett. And I interrupt her at this point, not trying to be rude, and say, oh, begging your pardon, miss, but isn't he an admiral? Well, I think that might have upset her a little bit because she was trying to make a point. Anywho, she says, you've got to go take this room for Admiral Beckett because he's resting on account of the Warden slicing him up so bad you could see his insides or on his outsides. Oh, I might be paraphrasing just a bit. Me. So here I am, puttering around looking for, things you see in a graveyard. Oh, I mean, that's likely to be all full of dead things, isn't it? Clawing at my face, isn't it? Oh. Meanwhile, the Admiral is getting a set upon his set upon. Having a rest and dreaming about his families and daring space adventures. Oh, back when I was in here, I never bothered with any of that. You know, using your memories like weapons against you in a bid to undermine your psyche and craft you into the perfect vessel for their schemes. All that nonsense.
As I dug the knife into his leg.
There? You know, this here's 2 times in just a short while having to go into the rooms. It's more than a fella can handle these. I'm supposed to be retired. It certainly would help if this spooky old house would stop hiding the damn room from me. Oh, it's not that one either. No, best be moving along. I'm afraid I'm going to have to... Oh, hang on a minute. Well, here it is. Ha! Plain as day. Must have shovelled things around on me again. What a nasty graveyard door this one is. All foggy and misty beyond. Right. No sense putting it off, Todd, old boy. Just another time in the rooms. Just like riding a bike. Here we go. All right, okay. Just like riding a bike, covered in spikes and fire. Okay, here we go. Oh, and I hate this part.
Respite Part 4. Bob.
It is the 27th day of the month of Jormungandr. The waning moon sets as I pen this entry. I've returned once again to this small library, my study, as I think of it, above the north wing. As far as I'm aware, I am the only being to have entered this room since Ash Manor was constructed. The architect knows of its existence, as she knows of every nook and cranny in this sprawling heap. She most assuredly does not know the contents of these journals. I know this with some certainty. If she did, I would be attempting to pen missives in my blood and entrails as a large wolf ripped at my very soul. Perhaps it would be a bird. She seems quite fond of them. Unfortunately, I have little to add to my body of knowledge, so I will attempt to use this precious time by myself to sum up what I know. With each iteration of the rooms, it seems the architect tweaks and changes the substrate in subtle but important ways. Management has claimed again and again that these changes are signs of success, that the fruitful nature of the project has allowed for improvements, upgrades, and the addition of supplementary staff. This is true, to an extent, but... A passing thought. New faces enter. Jailers, builders. Who are they? Supplementary. The truth of the matter is that the runes change without form or meaning. I'm beginning to wonder who truly designed this iteration, the architect or her creation itself. These changes may in part be a result of the guest in question. Beckett has proven to be formidable, even dangerous. I feel certain that I've hidden his extracurricular wanderings from the operations staff. But at some point he's going to push to know more. And after our brief conversation in the barn, his curiosity must be razor sharp. Once he's on his feet again, once this respite is ended, we'll have to have another talk. And I'm running out of ways to say, I can't tell you that. I find myself confused, frustrated, perplexed at my current situation. And despite everything that transpired between us, I dearly wish that Miss Winters was around to ask her opinion. If nothing else, I could ask her about these changes in me. What she could have done in that brief moment to tilt me on my axis so thoroughly. Wherever she is, I hope she is not suffering excessively. She was a remarkable mortal, as is this Beckett, of course. Perhaps there's something of her in him. Perhaps if I reach out again in the right way, in the right moment, I might be able to reach him, and at last find new purpose, find a spark of what I once had, and restore my faith in the project. A closing thought. We stood on the wall. She tumbled beyond my sight. Why am I still here?
Are you ready?
My best friend Meredith and I were getting ready to sneak out. We were amateur paranormal investigators treading lightly into the territory of conspiracy theorists. And tonight, we planned to get some answers. I shook my arms as though trying to dry my hands, an unsuccessful attempt to shake off my nerves. Yeah, absolutely. I had a smile on my face to mask my trepidation, a hair's breadth from hysterics as I reached for my ground floor window. You have your phone? Our phones would be our way of documenting what we found. So far, we'd done a couple urban exploration videos just after curfew, but we were about to blow the lid off our town's strange restrictions, expose what was really going on. Of course, we had no idea what we were going to find. I knew, though, that towns only imposed martial law curfews for a reason, and we were going to find out why.
You know I never leave home without it, Les.
Mary crunched a fallen twig underfoot, startling the both of us. We'd barely gotten 50 feet from my house, and already we were acting like wusses. It's just something about the true darkness of the night unnerved me. Curfew had been in place almost my entire life. Our plan wasn't fully formed since we didn't have any set destination in mind. At the moment, we simply wandered through the town, creeping across the sidewalk and looking over our shoulders every few seconds, waiting for someone to catch us. What do you think we'll find? I had to do something with all the bubbling excitement, and I was desperate to find something to cut through the silence.
Who knows? I just know there has to be a good reason for the curfew. Like, local government has to be up to something they don't want us to know about. Also, I'm pretty sure you don't have to whisper.
Was it some kind of secret society? A cult, maybe? Or a government experiment? What happened when people were found after dark? I'd never heard of anyone sneaking out. Ever. Maybe that's what made me most curious about what was really going on in Cemetery Falls. Now, technically that wasn't the town's name, but it's what we called it. The older generation hated it, but we'd all grown up with a big-ass cemetery in the center of the town, and they hadn't. What else were we supposed to call it? Besides, Mary and I needed to give the town a code name for our podcasts and videos. As two barely 21-year-old women, we didn't want to disclose our location to the world. It wasn't that big of a town, after all. We were sure if we told people the town's real name, we'd get some unwanted attention. Mary pulled out her phone.
Hey, cemetery stalkers, this is Mary and Les coming at ya. We're out and about after dark tonight in Cemetery Falls, and there's absolutely no one out here. We weren't lying when we told y'all about martial law. We've got a townwide curfew.
I looked over as she pulled her phone away from her face, flipping the camera and panning around the empty streets. We could see the lights on in many of the houses and apartments we passed, but not a single soul was out on the street. Not even a stray cat or a person walking a dog. Another few taps on her phone, and she held it up so both of our faces were in the viewfinder.
Sorry about the dark. Our phones are our flashlights tonight. No street lights. Why would a town need street lights if no one's allowed outside after dark, right? Anyway, the video might be a little choppy, but stay tuned. If all goes well, we're going to get plenty of scares for you.
She turned off the recorder and dropped her persona.
Seriously, though, do you think we should just start at the cemetery? I mean, any crazy rituals or secret underground bunkers would probably be there, don't you think?
I nodded. She was right, and we were on a mission. My hysterical adrenaline had worn off, and I was shivering from something that had nothing to do with the cold. I'd been out at night before, but not like this. The thought that there were places where going outside after dark wasn't forbidden only proved how sheltered I'd been. My family and I had never left Cemetery Falls, not even to go on vacation. I don't know if I want something to be in the graveyard or if I absolutely don't want to find anything in the graveyard. I mean, it's terrifying on its own, so we should get some good shots. But what if we really do find some kind of satanic ritual or something? Mary shrugged. Her family often vacations outside of town, outside of New York. Hell, she'd left the country a few times. She seemed perfectly acclimated to being outside at night. I tried not to feel too jealous.
I mean, yes and no. It would be hella wild to walk in the middle of a dark ritual. If we spot one, we just get some footage, creep a little closer, hopefully grab some audio, then hightail it the hell out of there.
She'd always been the brave one. Hell, this whole excursion was her idea. I'd pulled out my phone as we rounded a corner. We were on the main stretch now. Its official name was Watson Drive, but almost everyone called it Main Street. And almost smack dab in the middle of the town was the cemetery. It was huge. Most towns had a few different cemeteries and graveyards, but not us. We just had the one. I turned my camera on, pointing it at the gate, barely in sight. Right in front of us is the cemetery that gave our town its name. It's one of the oldest grave sites in America, at least as far as settler-made sites go. As you can see, there's nothing... Wait, what's that? I thought I saw something moving. I zoomed in. The cemetery was surrounded by trees. Maybe just an optical illusion caused by the wind? But it looked like there was something moving inside the gate. Did someone else get the idea to explore it before Mary and I?
Les, do you see that?
Mary had zoomed in with her phone as well, and her camera was a little better than mine. There was definitely movement in the cemetery.
What the fuck?
What are they? What's wrong with them? She shook her head, looking up at me with wide eyes. We'd been hyping up this outing to our viewers for weeks. We couldn't turn back without something to show for it. We've got to get closer. I took a deep breath, held it, and almost against my will started down the street. Through the camera, we'd seen movement. Unnatural movement. People shambling, acting strangely.
Maybe it's just a movie shoot or something.
If they're shooting a movie, then where are the lights? We looked at each other, terrified. I'd never wanted it to be a hoax more. I wanted the curfew to just be some government pissing contest, a way to see how easily they could keep their citizens inside at night. Well, we wanted a horror story. We stood there a long moment, watching the dark shapes as they passed the slats of the high wrought iron fence. Mary took a deep breath and pulled up her phone, opening her video recorder. She positioned her hand so we were both in the shot.
Okay, so we just got to the center of town, and those moving shapes we saw, whatever they are not figments of our imaginations.
Definitely not. I hoped my urban explorer persona might give me enough courage to cross the street. We've been standing here for a good few minutes wondering what to do next. We're not gonna lie to you, stalkers. This is fucking horrifying.
All right, I know this sounds crazy, but they're zombies. Let's get another shot of them while we're recording this.
I obliged, hitting my own camera and getting a shot from across the street. I could see them moving more clearly now. Bodies moving in the graveyard. Some were missing limbs, and all of them were an unhealthy, unnatural color. Whatever they were, they hadn't seemed to notice us. Meredith filmed me filming them.
When we were hyping this up, we were expecting maybe to find a few creepy abandoned places, a few scares, but he assumed there wasn't anything supernatural. This is unreal.
It's hard to make out because of the darkness. But if you see movement behind the fence, it's not a trick of your eyes. I swallowed the lump in my throat and wished I'd brought along some water. My mouth felt like cotton as I panned around. You all see how empty the street is. We haven't seen a single other person outside their homes tonight because of the curfew. Are these things the reason for the curfew? We can't be sure, but we're going to get closer and give you all a better look. I panned back to Mary, giving her camera an overconfident smile and wink. She gave mine a thumbs up.
Wish us luck, stalkers.
She hit the button to stop recording, letting it drop to her side. I kept mine up and on, steady as I could make it. Sliding my foot off the sidewalk, I slowly moved across the street.
What the hell is going on? Of course, we're the fucking town with a fucking haunted cemetery.
Mary stayed with me. As firm believers in the paranormal, aliens, and government cover-ups, the idea of something like zombies in our neighborhood should have been natural for us to accept. Fact was, though, that we'd never seen anything like this. Do you see a way inside? If we were going to do this, I wanted to do it right, which meant we'd have to get better footage of these things.
Let's look around.
I closed in with my phone against the slats, peering inside as I did. It was then that the smell hit me. My face contorted with disgust as the smell of freshly moved dirt and something else wafted into my nose. I immediately recognized it as the smell of death. Okay, cemetery stalkers, I don't know if you can see inside as well as I can, but be thankful you can't smell the absolutely rank stench coming from inside the cemetery. I walk by here every day on my way to work, and I've never smelled anything this bad in my life. I glanced away from the fence, looking around. I realized I'd lost sight of Mary. That was when something cold and strong grabbed my arm. Instinctively, I tried to break away. I dropped my phone, and it clattered to the ground. Without meaning to, I looked up into its eyes. One glassy white pupil stared back at me. The other socket was empty and rotted, yellow pus leaking down its face. I struggled against the thing's iron grip, forcing my arm free. Its flesh was smooth, almost like plastic. Its face, now pressed against the fence, tried to force its way through. Gray-blue skin stretched over muscle, bone, and fat that had begun to decay. The teeth were visible where lips and gums had been torn away. There was no way normal decomposition left such jagged lines. I backed away, leaving my phone in front of the fence, and bile rose in my throat. The thing didn't speak, didn't react. Had no voice. Just a hissing breath that gurgled in its throat. Fuck this! I turned to run and almost slammed headfirst into Meredith.
Okay, I found a way inside.
Forget about that, we have to get the fuck out of here! I grabbed her arm, forced her to turn to see what I saw, to understand this was no longer a fun paranormal game. If we got closer to those things, we were putting our lives in actual danger. Meredith swallowed a scream, glimpsing the creature before it disappeared from view. I turned towards home, hoping she would come with me. Instead, she grabbed my arm and looked me straight in the eye.
No, Leslie, no. Not yet. We can't walk away from this. came out here to solve a mystery, to find out why we had a curfew. We owe it to the people of this town to tell them why they can't go out at night. Why they're trapped inside like animals. Because the government knows that we're sitting on top of a fucking zombie den or some shit and hasn't done anything about it.
I swallowed, reaching up to wipe away a stray spatter of vomit. I tried to find my voice again, trying to find an ounce of the bravery I'd set out with.
Do you need me to slap you?
Only if I can slap you back.
Then are you ready to do this?
I held my hands out in front of me, and it actually hit me for the first time that I dropped my phone. I choked back tears as I looked towards the fence. Rubbing my arm gently, Meredith saw where it sat, partially obscured by the grass, within arm's length of that thing. It hadn't moved, now that it knew we were there.
It's okay, I have mine. Let's go. We don't have to get too close, just enough to get some footage of the... whatever they are.
Nodding, I took one more look at my phone, hoping it had fallen in a way that it was able to record something. It would be easy enough to come by later, to pick it up after sunrise. Following Meredith like a lost puppy, we rounded the corner and hugged the fence.
See there, between those two slats? It's a tight fit, but we're both small enough that we should be able to squeeze through.
It wasn't a very big gap. I wondered if we'd be able to fit through if we were in a life or death situation. Or if we were subjecting ourselves to certain death trying to go viral on fucking YouTube. I suppose it didn't matter. We'd agreed to see it through to the end. There was no way I could go home and live the rest of my life pretending I hadn't seen what I'd seen. All the creatures I could see were still near the front of the gate, where I'd screamed. We slipped through the slats and into the graveyard. Around us, the soil was freshly turned, like these things buried themselves during the day. I heard Meredith mumble something to herself as we moved towards the group, staying closer to the fence. I wanted to tell her we shouldn't get much closer than we were. We should stay within range of making a quick getaway. But I was too afraid to speak. Every hair on my body stood on end as I fought with my body's natural instinct to get the fuck out of there. I didn't know why, but I wish I'd brought a weapon. Not that I know what to do with one. My head snapped in her direction. One of those creatures, one I hadn't seen before, loomed out of the darkness and grabbed her from behind. Its hand dug into her stomach. 5 bloody stains formed on her shirt where the thing's fingernails, its whole fingers ripped into her soft flesh. Her scream was cut off as the thing bit into her throat, and soon the only sound was a soft gurgle as she drowned in her own blood. There was nothing I could do, and the smell of fresh blood spilling onto the grass added to the stench of putrescine. Her scream had attracted the attention of more of those creatures, and I sprinted for the opening of the fence. I forgot about the phones, about our mission. I forgot everything except my will to live and Meredith's face, contorted in fear as that gray thing had bitten into her. I knew I'd never forget the fear in her eyes. I didn't even give myself time to think an apology as I crouched and tossed myself through the small opening in the fence. I was nearly out, but something caught me. I tugged, feeling a sharp sting as my jeans ripped. I turned, scurrying in a crab walk away from the fence, and realized I was staring back into the bloodied, ruined face of my best friend. For half a second, I was relieved there was a fence between the two of us, but her last words rang through my mind. The creature that used to be Meredith got on its knees and scurried through the space in the slats, descending on me before I could make any move to escape it. No! Please! The smell of her perfume mixed with the blood and death in the air. Her teeth were already stained with blood. She tore at my flesh, tearing but not chewing, her ruined throat working to swallow as my life spilled out around me. Darkness closed over me from the pain. I couldn't finish a thought. We weren't ready.
Things You See in a Graveyard. Written by Samantha Mayotte. With performances by Kristi Boulton as Leslie and Erin King as Meredith. Respite was written by Michael Zenke, featuring performances by Eddie Cooper as Beckett, Chantal Jean-Pierre as Alma, Graham Rowat as Bob, Alistair Mackey as Todd, and Jason Wilson as the Warden. Musical compositions by J.M. Scherf. Episode artwork, web development, and creative direction by Cassie Pertite. Social media and Patreon management by Brooks Bigley. Videography by Hale Scherf. Audio engineering and sound design was by me, Jason Wilson. Well, another week down and another episode in the books. Best you head home now before it gets dark, roomies. Don't want to get caught outside after curfew. We really could not do this without all of you, and would like to take the time to thank our patrons once again, and to any of those who have taken the time to leave us a 5-star rating and review. Again, those reviews keep us at the top of the charts, and it makes it easier for more tortured souls to find the show. Patrons like Aaron Anthony, Amy Nikolai, Arthur Unk, Braden Zanussi, Diver Ellie Dowell, Emily Cullen, Jackalbot Snows, Ronan Kumori, Jason Porras, Jessica Finch, Karina Sonina, Kelly Bear, Kyle Wilcox, Laura Lupinetti, Lynn Browning, Lizzie B., Megan Pruitt, Michael Velez, Mike Devine, Microphilic BG, Page 314, Patrick Stewart, Plin Plon All Night Long, Sean Gary, Sean McCorkadale, Sparky Anglin, Spirit Live, Stacy Thewis, Talicia Gullman, The Original Nick Show, Teresa Tabor, Kay Woods, and Courtney. The Grey Rooms is also streaming for free on Spotify. Just get the Spotify app and or open it in the browser and search for The Grey Rooms. And we here at The Grey Rooms love our fans, and we want to give back to you in the best way, well, we know how. And we have lots of fun things to show you, and I hope you like it. You can find out more by joining us on social media. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and YouTube. And we took your advice and extended an olive branch to all the tortured souls who have passed through the rooms. Our emotional support group is always looking to help you with all of your needs. And don't forget about our merch store. It's full of epic designs and logos for you to sport, showing the world that you are a survivor of these very rooms. All of this can be found in the show notes and on our website at thegrayrooms.com. And let's not forget the icing on the cake, our lovely Discord channel. Come on over there and meet the authors, meet some of the voice actors, meet Bob, and run the hell away from the Warden. Our Discord channel is open to all. It's a family environment, and it's a lot of fun. So jump on in there and join us today. And now to get back to work so that we can keep
this rolling. So until next time, we will see you next week.